Lights, camera, action.
And the winner is...
Welcome back to Classic Reviews presented by...
This is classic?
Oh no, this is current, Buzz. Whoops.
Okay.
Welcome back to Current Reviews presented by Oscar Reel Movie Channel. You're here with Matt and Haley Schmidt. Today we've got a streaming, what is this, Amazon original?
Yes.
The Report, written and directed by Scott Z. Burns, starring Adam Driver, Annette Bening, John Hamm, among many others. A couple other big names. Dexter, Michael C. Hall is in this, Tim Blake Nelson. So yeah, there's a bunch of people in this movie. Adam Driver, clearly the lead in this. He's got the most screen time. It is about... after the attacks in 9/11 take place and the CIA wanting to get information, they employ James Mitchell to institute his own psychological tactics on POWs to interrogate them and then to get information from them to help prevent other attacks. And it's considered somewhat of a success until Adam Driver, he starts investigating the validity of those interrogations and how much information they actually got from those people. So a little bit of a war themed movie, but a little All the President's Men in this too, with the investigative side of things with Adam Driver's character. So yeah, kind of a thriller, a low-key thriller. Mm-hmm. What did you think of The Report?
Yeah, I wanted to add too, so Adam Driver's character, Daniel Jones.
Danny Dimes.
Yeah, Danny Dimes is what I kept wanting to call him. He's like, is he part of, I kind of get confused if it was part of the CIA or if it was something separate, but he kind of worked in different intelligence type positions in Washington. And Senator Dianne Feinstein, I'm pretty sure she's senator in California, she kind of led this directive of let's investigate in this. So that's Annette Bening's character is Senator Feinstein. So that's kind of where this kicks off. And you're right. It is it's a very a high energy movie, and it makes you feel stressed out in a certain kind of way, because they're showing as Daniel Jones and his team are investigating all of this information from all of the interrogations, one by one they come across these names of these prisoners that were questioned, and they flash back to videos of how these people were treated and the waterboarding and all the different tactics they use to basically deplete these people of basic care, basic needs kind of thing. They don't let them sleep, and they throw water on them and all that sort of stuff. And it's very, very high intensity, very emotional. But on the flip side, he has to be nonpartisan, completely factual with all this stuff. And so he's working, Daniel Jones working really hard to put together this report that, makes sense and presents the facts, but he's so invested in it too. So that's where the emotion comes out too, is that he's so invested in all this, and he wants the information to come out, and he wants, people to understand what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just I feel tensions are high throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, and he's investigating the CIA, who they don't want stuff to come out, so they're kind of, doing things that they're not supposed to be doing either,
That's right. He wasn't working for the CIA. It was the CIA that led this.
That's who he was investigating.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. He was working for the senator.
Yes.
It opens with him going to Washington D.C. to try to get a job, where he interviews John Hamm. And he's basically told to go get experience in intelligence. And I felt in the first 5 minutes, we're like zoomed through 3 different timelines. It's like, oh, it's 2000, now it's 2001 in the attacks, and now it's him interviewing for a job until they go get more intelligence experience, and then it jumps ahead another couple of years. So I felt like it was kind of disjointed with the timeline early on. It kind of settled in, and it wasn't as big of a deal later on in the movie, but I felt like early on it was kind of jumping all over the place.
Did you find it easy to follow, though? Because I felt that, like, the way they did it, I mean, it's kind of like documentary style in the way they show, like, here's the time and date, like, here's the date and place that they're at.
Yeah, it was easy to follow. They would put, like, the year giant numbers on the screen, but it was just, like, it felt like
they're jumping around a lot.
Yeah, like, here's a 30-second scene and now a new year, and a minute scene and now a new year. He was told to initially investigate why what was on tapes that got burnt by, like, the CIA. They had these, like, interrogation tapes that they burned, and he was initially told to just figure out what was on those tapes and why they got burnt. And then that's another time it jumps ahead a couple of years where they were like, oh, good job on that report. Now we're going to want you to go even deeper. And I was like, I kind of wish, like, they didn't mention that ever again. Like, what was on those tapes. And, like, let's show a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things I thought were interesting in this movie, like how they were very... they wanted to point out, like, to keep just politics out of it. Because obviously it takes place in D.C. It involves the CIA and a senator, but they clearly wanted to keep politics out of it, and it was like just the facts. And they also portrayed, this takes place during 2 different presidential terms with Bush and Obama, and they didn't really favor one or the other. They kind of made both of them not look great, I guess, in their own way.
Yeah,
people were doing things behind Bush's back and without him really knowing about it, and then they would talk about how, like, Obama, like, okayed a couple things that happened. So it was kind of interesting how they didn't really show too much favoritism there, so that was kind of interesting. But then so after the 9/11 attacks, they introduce James Mitchell, who, what was he before? Was he just like a psychiatrist? He was like a freelance psychiatrist or something that the CIA they interviewed to just see what his tactics were and to see if they would work. And he's the one who came up with the whole, like, waterboarding and sleep deprivation and stuff like that. And the CIA just, like, said, you're hired. Here's $81 million.
Yeah, I would say the way it was presented in the movie was that, these 2 guys that came in, they have this, like, slideshow, and they literally just click through things very informally, like, here's something we can do, and this, and this, and this. And someone's like, so is there science behind it? Oh, yeah, lots of science behind this. And they're like, okay, well, we need to get going on this, so let's approve it. Yeah,
like, if you're the CIA...
It seemed like it was approved, like, very quickly, without a lot of...
Like, these are high members of the CIA, and you're sitting through this slideshow where he's got, like, drawings of mock burials and waterboarding and stuff like that, and you're the CIA, and you're just sitting here going, yeah, this is legit. This guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I think that's hard to, like, picture, like, that happening, but, if we give it context, like, obviously, like, there was a lot of pressure going on, like, immediately after 9/11, and so not like this was the right thing to do, but I think a lot of people were just like, we need to do something, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, but at the same time, they were, like, actively trying to outdo the FBI. They were like kicking the FBI. Like, at the same time we need to do some, but at the same time the CIA was like, we need to do it, but we need to look better than the FBI because while their stuff is working, we can't give them credit, so we need to do our own thing. I don't know about that. That's a little petty.
Yeah.
Also with Mitchell, during that meeting, he tells a story about how about dogs and how he traps them in an electrical fence. And I like their response is like, yeah, let's listen to this guy.
Right. I know. Yeah. It's one of those things, like, as you watch it and you're like, I know this is boiled down, but if that was the only information I got, it'd be hard for me to okay it.
Yeah, and I thought this movie had a lot of cool moments where you're like, oh, and you were like gonna wait for them to get paid off, and I felt like it didn't always happen. Like Tim Blake Nelson plays, he isn't a doctor because he actually points out that doctors, because of their their oath, they actually can't
The Hippocratic Oath, yeah.
yeah, they can't partake in this stuff because they're watching someone get tortured, and that is obviously it's
Against the
against
oath.
their oath.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's not a doctor. He's like
He's a physician's assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at one point he pops up and talks to Adam Driver, and he tells him it's all in the emails before he runs off.
Yeah.
But I felt like there's no payoff there. I don't know what the payoff was supposed to be with that.
It's
like obviously like he's looking at all the emails and he's always looking at emails, but there wasn't like a certain email where he went, aha, this is what Tim Blake Nelson, great actor, who is playing that doctor, said to me, and this is the payoff. Like, that didn't really happen.
Right, because, yeah, Tim Blake Nelson's character was the one where he's like, I'm out. Like, I will not watch people get tortured like this. I will not be part of this. And so, yeah, like, you really were waiting for that, like, aha moment. Like, oh, my God, what's in the emails, you know? And it's like, yeah, like, little bits of information come up, and you're right, as part of, like, this whole thing, but there wasn't one moment where you're like, oh, that's the email, like the one email he's talking about or something.
Like
so,
movies
I
like this generally have like the thing that you're chasing, you know, like you're looking for that final peg to fall in the right slot or that final puzzle piece to like give you the whole picture. I felt like it didn't really have that. It was just he kept investigating, you know, which is fine. Like it wasn't a bad movie or anything, but like that's usually you get that great payoff with that final like puzzle piece or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I like how they gotta have a lawyer scene where they're like going over the terminology and they're trying to sidestep it. Like, oh well, I guess you could interpret this phrase to mean
oh my gosh,
this.
right? Yeah, like they're literally looking at like the language from the Geneva Convention. It's like, oh well, you know, torture involves like intentional injury or like something that would purposefully cause death, and like we're not trying to kill these people, but if it happens as we're questioning them,
it's a side effect.
Then,
it wasn't the intent.
It's just like, oh my God, like that's the sort of stuff where you
suck.
just go, oh my God, how can you? It's sad to see people rationalize that, but again, like the context of 9/11, like people were looking at things completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, no.
People were willing to...
Does that validate these things that happen, though?
For me, it doesn't. But for a lot of these people, I'm sure that's the way that they look at it.
Oh, that's 100% how they look at it. That's why it happened.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple other things where I wish they would like show instead of just telling. Like at the beginning of the movie, when he's meeting with a lawyer, Adam Driver's character, because he's realizing that he's kind of in trouble. He's kind of quote unquote
like the CIA
stolen.
wants to sue him.
Yeah, because he kind of stole some incriminating documentation that helps his report, but it was technically illegal to remove them, or how does he phrase it? He didn't steal them. He just moved them from one place to another.
Yeah.
While meeting with that lawyer,
and the particular like set of information he was looking at like wasn't supposed to have been provided by the CIA, but it was. And
yeah,
so
it was
like,
accidentally provided for him. But in that scene, he says like he had a girlfriend at the beginning of this investigation, but then like they broke up. But they never show that.
Yeah.
Which is compared to Zodiac, where Jake Gyllenhaal has a wife and kid, and that movie shows how him investigating the Zodiac killer like deteriorates their relationship. That was one of the more interesting parts of that movie. So I think maybe having that in here could have, you know, add another like B plot or C plot to the movie, which maybe it didn't need, but maybe it could have been interesting.
For me, I feel like that would have been too much because, like you said, we're already kind of bouncing back and forth between two different timelines, like him investigating things and going back to like when it actually happened, and. You know, I mean, one of the people, like one of the guys on the team that he's working with, like another like researcher with him, the two of them sit down and they just kind of talk to each other like, do you ever have dreams about this stuff? Like, do you have nightmares about this? And so it's like, I feel like that gave it, I mean, it's, the thing is like, it's pretty obvious that if you spend, you know, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week researching tortured prisoners, I feel like it's pretty obvious how that would, like, ruin a relationship.
Yeah, I know, but like, it was interesting, like how it was done. At least I know it's a different movie, but like to see it happen, I like the show instead of tell. Mm-hmm. Showing it is more interesting than just saying it. So that's just my point with that. So yeah.
For me, I didn't think it needed it.
All right. So yeah, getting towards the end of the movie, so it becomes clear that these torture tactics by Mitchell didn't really do anything. Adam Driver finds out that all the information that they claimed that they had learned while doing these torture tactics, they had actually gotten from other sources. It was kind of funny because like, I said in the movie that like, I have to rewatch Zero Dark 30 because
right.
I know that this
they
is a big topic.
They bring up the Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I need to rewatch that movie because that's a big part of this because they claim that they found the location of Osama bin Laden through these tactics, and they actually bring it up in this movie. Like a couple minutes later, they show Adam Driver like watching the trailer for Zero Dark 30 and like how amazing it is, and it turns out that was false. That they didn't actually get bin Laden's location through these torture tactics. So they got it through a different source. So
yeah, like he made it clear that he's like the only information they got was either information they already had or the things that were said turned out not to be true.
Yeah, they were either lies or something they already knew.
Yep.
So yeah, towards the end of the movie, it becomes clear that that's the case, and he wants it to be public. Like he wants his report to be open to the public. He wants everyone to know. Meanwhile, the senator and everyone else on the Democratic side of things, because Obama's now taken the presidency, so the Democrats are kind of back in the White House. They all don't want it to go public. They just kind of want like an internal, like, oh, sorry this happened, but not let everyone know about it because like we got him anyway. Like we got bin Laden, so it doesn't really matter how we did it. But Adam Driver, Daniel Jones, like he wants to push it. Like he wants I want this to be public, and it takes forever for people to finally agree to do it. And I thought the ending was kind of anticlimactic because there was this huge push of like, no, we're not going to go public with it. It's not going to happen. And in the end, they got him to go public by they just yelled at a guy in a room for like John Hamm is in the room with all these senators. And they all just start saying, we want this to go public, and he eventually just agrees. I'm like, this is all you had to do? You just had to yell at the guy for a couple minutes? Why didn't this get done earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like my favorite part of the movie is kind of, like, that final lead up to, hey, is this going to go public or not? Because when he has, like, his first, like, draft of the report, which is 4,000 pages long.
Yeah, it's huge. It's in the trailer. Like it's in the trailer of the movie. They show it where it's like just towering above his head when he's sitting down.
Off. Yeah, like 2 towers next to him. But so they have the initial report and they're like, okay, like we're glad you have all this information compiled from what was sent to you by the CIA. Well, like sit down now with the CIA and get their side of things. And so they like offer points and the CIA, gives their rebuttal. And then it flips to Daniel Jones saying with Senator Feinstein and like the two of them like rebutting. And so it's like you just keep ping ponging back and forth where he's like, no, this is what happens. And she's like, yeah, but we can't say it like that. And the CIA is like, no, that's not what happened. And
yeah, that was a cool series of scenes. They're interviewing the CIA guy who gives an answer, but then you're right. It cuts to him like later on talking to Annette Bening, Senator Feinstein's character, saying, no, this is a lie because of this reason. So it's like, yeah, that was cool where like that happened a couple times in a row where it's like, oh, this is why this happened. No, this is false. And it's just back and forth. And her, at the end of that series scenes, her response is just, stop meeting with them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, you're right. It was a little anticlimactic in the fact that, it's like, basically the Senate Judiciary Committee just kind of wears down John Hamm's character. He's like, yeah, fine. And the sad thing, and this is just like weird timing because I feel like over just like a few days after that, someone I don't even follow on Twitter, but it was one of those things where it's like enough of the people you follow commented on it or liked it or whatever, and some person was like, oh, like as we're homeschooling our kids in quarantine, like our kids are learning about 9/11 and whatever, and they're like, I can't believe there's no mention of the Abu Ghraib prison in there. And that's where, a lot of this torture and stuff happened. And it's like, yeah, even though this report has come out, even though we know that this has happened, America doesn't really want it part of the history books.
No, and, if they don't want it part of the history books, then it won't be.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's just kind of an interesting, exposition on that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So what score would you give the report? It's a 7.2 on IMDb and 83% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I'm probably leaning more towards that. I'd give it an 8.3. I think it was really well done. It was really interesting. Some of it is, obviously very hard to watch. There were some scenes where I'm just like, I can't look at this. I just want to plug my ears a little bit. But it was, it was pretty good. It had kind of a documentary type feel to it, which I always like. So, low 8s for me, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to 7.9. There's some good stuff in here. There's things I learned that I didn't know before,
sure.
Which is kind of cool. And it is it's not a documentary. It's still a docudrama, so you kind of got to fact check it a little bit. But I mean, this is a movie that's trying to fact check society in a sense by letting people know hey, those tortures weren't actually effective. So a chunk of this information is legit. But so while there's a lot of good information there, I still think there's times where it felt a little choppy or a little anticlimactic in the end, so I still think it probably could have been done a little better, but overall still pretty enjoyable at 7.9. No,
but it's good.
It's no Spotlight or All the President's Men or those are the top end ones, but this one's still pretty good and still worth checking out, especially since it's streaming on Amazon Prime. I want John Hamm to play a character who doesn't wear a suit. Saw him in Richard Jewell.
What about Bridesmaids?
Yeah, that's been a while though. How old is that movie?
I think it came out in 2011.
So it's it's a classic review.
It's a
old.
classic, right?
It's 9 years old. But yeah, it'd be nice to get John Hamm, out of the suit. But
Do you want him naked?
Yeah, pornos. We need John Hamm in some pornos a little more often.
Well, I've heard.
Yeah, he's got
his Hammaconda,
his big dong. His giant dong.
Oh my god, this is so off the rails.
That's fine. I don't have to be professional all the time. We're not professionals.
Too funny.
So yeah, that's all that's our closing thoughts on the report. Check it out on Amazon Prime.